The darkness down here isn't like the darkness in your bedroom when you turn off the lamp. Eat us weight. It presses against your eyeballs until you see colors that aren't there. Caleb knew that weight well, but he never thought he'd be buried under it. He heard the rookie, Silas, sobbing in the corner, the sound echoing off the wet slate roof like a ghost in a tomb. Caleb looked at his methane detector. The battery light blinked red. 1 bar lift. He gripped his rosary, the beads coated in coal dust, and realized that the hardest part wasn't dyeing it, was waiting for the mountain to decide if it was done eating. The alarm clock on the nightstand didn't buzz. It clicked. A sharp, mechanical sound that cut through the silence of 3:30 a.m. like a pickaxe striking stone. Caleb Mercer was awake before it happened. He was always awake before it happened. After 35 years in the mines, your body doesn't need a clock. It just knows when it's time to go back to the dark. Caleb swung his legs over the side of the bed. His knees popped. A sound like dry twigs snapping. He sat there for a moment, in the gray pre-dawn light, staring at his boots in the corner. Steel-toed leather, scuffed to the color of ash. Laces frayed. They looked like tired old dogs waiting by the door. He stood up, his back stiff. Every miner carries the mountain in their spine. It's a slow accumulation of weight. You don't notice it in your 20s, when you're young and bulletproof. But by the time you hit 54, like Caleb, you feel every ton of rock you've ever walked under. In the kitchen, the coffee pot was already gurgling. His wife, Martha, was asleep in the other room. He moved quietly, a ghost in his own house. He poured the coffee black, hot enough to scald the roof of his mouth. He needed the pain to wake up. He needed the heat to chase away the chill that settled in his bones overnight. Outside, the air was crisp. It was November in West Virginia, and the frost clung to the windshield of his Ford pickup. The engine turned over with a heavy groan. As he drove down the winding road toward Blackwood Creek, the headlights cut through the fog. The mist rolled off the mountains like smoke, thick and heavy. The mine sat at the bottom of the hollow, a sprawling beast of rusted metal and conveyor belts. It never slept. You could hear the hum of the ventilation fans from a mile away. It was a constant drone, a low vibration that you felt in your teeth. Caleb parked the truck and grabbed his dinner bucket. He walked toward the bathhouse, nodding to the men he passed. There wasn't much talking. Not this early. Just nods and grunts. They were men of few words, saving their breath for the work. Inside the locker room, the smell hit him. It's a smell you can't wash off. A mix of sulfur, stale sweat, damp clothes, and grease. He opened his locker, stripping off his street clothes and pulling on his blues. The reflective stripes on his shirt caught the overhead fluorescent lights. He strapped on his belt. The battery pack for his cap lamp was heavy on his hip. He clipped the self-rescuer, the emergency breather, to his side. It was a comforting weight, but also a grim reminder. If you ever had to use it, you are already in hell. He met up with his crew at the elevator cage. There was Preacher Miller, a man who could quote scripture faster than he could shovel coal. There was Tiny, who was 6'4" and wide as a doorframe. And then there was the new kid, Silas. Silas looked like he was 12 years old. His helmet was too clean. His boots were too new. He was jittery, bouncing on his heels. He looked at Caleb with wide eyes. Caleb just spat a stream of tobacco juice into a cup and looked away. The kid hadn't learned the rhythm yet. He hadn't learned that down there. You move slow and steady. Panic kills faster than gravity. The cage rattled as the gate slid shut. The operator hit the lever, and the floor dropped out from under them. They fell into the earth. The daylight above them shrank to a square, then a star, then nothing. The air pressure changed, popping their ears. They were descending into a world that belonged to the fossils and the ancient rivers. While the cage descended, Caleb's mind drifted back up. It always did. The transition from surface to seam was the only time he allowed himself to worry about the things he couldn't control. He thought about the stack of bills on the kitchen counter. The heating oil prices were up again. The transmission on the truck was slipping. And Martha's medicine, the insurance covered some, but not all. It never covered all. Mining paid well. It was the only job in the county that could buy a house and put a kid through college. But the cost of living was a rising tide, and Caleb felt like he was treading water in steel-toed boots. He remembered the conversation from the night before. Martha had been sitting in her armchair, knitting a blanket for a grandchild that didn't exist yet. Their son, Jacob, had moved to Ohio 3 years ago. He got a job in IT. He worked in an office with air conditioning and windows. "Caleb," she had said, her voice soft. "How much longer?" He hadn't looked at her. He had focused on the television, watching the weather report. "Until the house is paid off, Martha, you know that. The house is just wood and brick," she replied. "You're flesh and blood, and you're coughing more." He tried to hide it, swallowing the tickle in his throat, but the dust has a way of staying with you. They call it the black lung, but that sounds too poetic. It feels like someone filled your chest with steel wool. Every breath is a negotiation. But what choice was there? The town of Blackwood Creek was built on coal. The high school football team was the miners. The statues in the park were men with pickaxes. If you didn't work the mine, you worked at the gas station or the dollar store. And those jobs didn't pay for Martha's pills. He did it for her. He did it because his father had done it, and his grandfather before him. It was a sacrifice, yes, but it was also a duty. A man provides, even if he has to tear the earth apart to do it. The cage clanged to a halt at the bottom of the shaft. The doors opened, revealing the main tunnel. It was whitewashed with rock dust to prevent explosions, giving it a ghostly, cavernous feel. The air was cool and moved in a stiff breeze from the massive intake fans. "All right, boys," Preacher said, adjusting his belt. "Let's go get that black gold." They boarded the Mantrip, a low-slung rail car that would take them 3 miles back into the mountain. As the car rattled into the darkness, Caleb looked at Silas. The kid was gripping the safety bar with white knuckles. "Relax, son," Caleb shouted over the noise of the wheels. "The mountain ain't gonna bite ya." "Unless you give it a reason." Silas forced a smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. He was thinking about the stories. Every miner knows the stories. Monongah Sago, Upper Big Branch. Names that are etched in black granite. Caleb knew them too. But you don't think about the ghosts when you're on the clock. You think about the roof bolts. You think about the rib walls. You think about the job. They reached the working face. Section 9. This was the frontier. The continuous miner machine sat there like a dormant dragon, a massive piece of equipment with a rotating drum of steel teeth. Its job was to chew into the coal seam, ripping the mineral from the earth. Caleb was the operator today. He climbed into the cab, checking his levers and monitors. The remote control box hung around his neck. He fired up the machine. The roar was deafening. The sprayers kicked on, misting water to keep the dust down, but the air still thickened instantly. For 4 hours, eat was smote. The rhythm took over. Cut, load, shuttle car. Cut, load, shuttle car. The coal spilled onto the belts, black and shiny. It was good coal, metallurgical grade. The kind that makes steel, the kind that builds skyscrapers in cities Caleb would never visit. Silas was on the scoop, cleaning up the loose rock behind the miner. He was doing okay, a little slow, but careful. Caleb kept an eye on him, watching his caplight bob in the gloom. Then the mountain spoke. It wasn't a noise at first. It was a feeling. A bump. The floor jumped beneath Caleb's feet, just a fraction of an inch. It felt like a heavy truck driving past your house, but magnified. Caleb killed the power to the miner instantly. The roar died away, leaving only the hum of the ventilation and the distant clatter of the belt. "Did you feel that?" Tani asked, his voice echoing. "I felt it," Caleb said. He looked at the roof. The slate above them was dark and smooth. But geology is a tricky thing. Tectonic pressures build up over millions of years. Sometimes they release all at once. "Check the methane," Caleb ordered. Preacher pulled out his detector. He held it up near the roof. Reading 0.2. We're good. It felt like a pressure bump, Caleb said, his eyes narrowing. Let's back the equipment out, Hoost, to be safe. We'll rebolt the roof before we cut any more. He reached for the tram lever to back the continuous miner up. That was when the world exploded. It didn't come from the face. It came from the gob-the-mind-out area behind them. A massive section of the sandstone roof, acres of it, snapped. The displacement of air was like a hurricane in a tunnel. The wind hit them first. A shockwave of dust and grit that knocked Caleb flat against the steel side of the machine. Then came the sound, a thunderclap so loud it bypassed the ears and vibrated directly into the skull. The lights flickered and died. The main power was cut. Total, absolute darkness. Caleb lay on the ground, his ears ringing. He could taste blood. He scrambled to his hands and knees, fumbling for his helmet. He found it and clicked the lamp on. The beam cut through a cloud of dust, so thick it looked like solid milk. "Sound off," Caleb yelled. His voice sounded strange, muffled by the dust. "I'm here." Tyne's voice from the left. "I'm good." "Preacher," from the right. "Silas." Caleb yelled. "Silence! Silas!" Caleb crawled forward. The dust was choking him. He pulled his shirt up over his nose. He swept his light across the tunnel. He saw the shuttle car, overturned on its side like a toy, and there, near the rib, was a boot. Caleb scrambled over the debris. Silas was curled up in a ball, his arms over his head. He was shaken. "Kit! You hit!" Caleb grabbed his shoulder. Silas looked up. His face was masked in black dust, his eyes wide white circles of terror. I can't breathe." "Get up!" Caleb said, hauling him to his feet. "We gotta move. That roof ain't done settling." They gathered near the continuous miner. The dust was starting to settle, but the air was still hazy. Caleb looked back down the tunnel the way out. It was gone. A wall of rock, jagged and broken, blocked the entry. The roof had come down completely, sealing them in. Preacher walked up to the pile and shone his light on it. He didn't say a word. He just touched the rock, then looked back at Caleb. "We're boxed in," Preacher said softly. Caleb checked his detector. The numbers were climbing. 0.5, 0.8. "Ventilation is cut," Caleb said, trying to keep his voice steady. "The fan can't push air through this rubble. Methane is gonna build up." "What do we do, Cal?" Tiny asked. The big man sounded small. Caleb looked at his crew. 3 men and a boy, buried 3 miles deep. He took a deep breath, filtering the dust through his teeth. "We deploy the curtain," Caleb said. "We build a barricade. We conserve air. And we wait." They found a crosskit, a small alcove, between 2 tunnels that hadn't collapsed. It was tight, maybe 10 feet by 10 feet. They used the heavy canvas ventilation curtains to seal off the entrance, weighing down the bottom with loose coal to make it airtight. This was their life raft. Inside, the air was still. They sat in the dark to save their cap lamp batteries. Total darkness is a heavy thing. It messes with your equilibrium. You can't tell up from down. Caleb sat with his back against the cold coal rib. He could hear Silas breathing short. Shallow gasps. "Cal," Silas whispered, "are we gonna die?" Caleb didn't answer immediately. He thought about lying. He thought about telling the kid it would be fine, that the rescue team was already halfway there. But miners smell lies like they smell gas. "I don't know, son," Caleb said, "but we ain't dead yet. And as long as we ain't dead, we're fighting." Time lost its meaning. Was it an hour? 10 hours? A day? The hunger set in first, then the thirst. But the worst was the mind. In the silence, the brain starts to create its own noise. Caleb started hearing things. He heard the sound of a lawnmower. He heard his wife humming. He heard the distinct sound of a screen door slamming. "Do you hear that?" Silas asked suddenly. "Someone's drilling." Caleb listened. He strained his ears until they hurt. There was nothing but the shifting of the earth, the groan of the mountain settling its weight. "No, Silas. Not yet." "I hear it," Silas shouted, his voice cracking. He stood up, fumbling in the dark. "They're here! I gotta tell them." He lunged for the curtain. "No!" Caleb tackled him. They rolled on the hard floor, cold, jagged against their skin. Caleb pinned the boy down. Silas was thrashing, wild with panic. The miner's madness was setting in. The carbon dioxide levels were probably rising, confusing their brains. "Stop it," Caleb hissed, holding him down. "You open that curtain. You let the bad air in. You kill us all. Do you hear me? You kill us all." Silas went limp, sobbing into the dirt. Caleb held him there, rocking him like a child. He felt a tear slide down his own cheek, cutting a track through the cold dust. Caleb's mind drifted to Jacob. He remembered teaching the boy to ride a bike. He remembered the look on Jacob's face when he left for Ohio. It wasn't sadness. It was relief. Jacob had escaped. He had gotten out of the hollow. Good, Caleb thought. Stay out, son. Don't ever come back to this. He pulled his rosary from his pocket. He wasn't a church-going man like Preacher, but don't everyone believes in something. He ran his thumb over the beads. Hail Mary, full of grace. The air was getting heavy. Thick. It felt like breathing soup. Tiny had stopped talking hours ago. He was just sleeping, or maybe unconscious. Preacher was whispering psalms, his voice a low drone. Caleb checked his detector. The battery was dying. The screen flickered. Oxygen was at 16%. They were fading. Caleb felt a strange calmness wash over him. It wasn't fear anymore. It was acceptance. He had done his shift. He had provided. The house would be paid off with the insurance money. Martha would be okay. He closed his eyes, letting the darkness take him. He saw the green hills of West Virginia. He saw the creek running clear. He saw the sun. Thump. Caleb's eyes snapped open. Was it a dream? Thump, thump, thump. Rhythmic, metallic. It wasn't the mountain. The mountain doesn't have rhythm. Preacher, Caleb croaked. His throat was like sandpaper. Preacher! Wake up! I hear it, Preacher whispered. They grabbed a roof, bolt a long steel road end. A heavy wrench. Caleb crawled to the roof of their small alcove. He found a metal strap bolted into the rock. He hit it. Clang, clang, clang. He waited. From high above, through 300 feet of solid rock, came the vibration. A faint, distant, drilling sound. They had located them. They were drilling a rescue hole. A surge of adrenaline, pure and sharp, flooded Caleb's system. He shook Silas. Wake up, kid. They found us. It took another 4 hours. 4 hours of listening to the drill get louder and louder. The sound was beautiful. It was the sound of life. Finally, the drill broke through the roof. A small probe, no wider than a soda can, dropped into their space. A speaker crackled to life. Hello. Is anyone down there? Caleb grabbed the microphone, attached to the probe. He tried to speak, but he had to clear his throat twice. Yeah, he rasped. Yeah, we're here. 4 of us. We're hungry, and we're out of Copenhagen. He heard cheering on the other end. It sounded like a stadium. Hang tight, boys. We're pumping fresh air down now. The capsule is coming. The fresh air hit them like a splash of ice water. It was sweet and cold. It smelled of pine trees and diesel exhaust, and it was the best thing Caleb had ever smelled. When the rescue capsule finally arrived, a narrow steel cage that looked like a torpedo, they sent Silas up first. 10 Preach, then Tiny. Caleb was the last one. The captain always leaves the ship last. He climbed into the capsule. It was tight. He looked back at the darkness of the mine one last time. He looked at the spot where they had sat for 2 days. He looked at the rock that had tried to kill them. Not today, he whispered. The cable tightened. He was lifted off the ground. He rose through the borehole, spinning slowly. The darkness gave way to gray, then to blinding, brilliant white. Hands grabbed him. Strong hands. He was pulled out onto the grass. The light was excruciating. He squinted, shielding his eyes. He heard a scream. "Caleb!" Martha broke through the line of police tape. She hit him like a freight train. She was crying, shaking, burying her face in his filthy, coal-stained neck. Caleb wrapped his arms around her. He looked around. There were ambulances, news cameras, hundreds of people, but all he saw was her. He took a deep breath. The air outside tasted thin compared to the mine, but it tasted like freedom. 6 months later, Caleb sat on his front porch. The rocker creaked back and forth. He had a glass of iced tea in his hand. He wasn't wearing his blues. He was wearing jeans and a flannel shirt. His boots were by the door, clean and polished. They hadn't touched coal dust in half a year. The mine had reopened, but Caleb hadn't gone back. The doctor said his lungs couldn't take any more dust. The settlement from the company was enough to pay off the house and put a little away. A truck pulled into the driveway. A shiny new pickup. Silas hopped out. The kid looked different. He had filled out. He walked with a little more weight in his step. He wasn't a nervous boy anymore. "Hey, big cow," Silas said, walking up the steps. "Newt." Caleb nodded. "How's the shift?" "Long," Silas said. He leaned against the railing. "They put me on the bolter today. Preacher says I'm a natural." Caleb smiled. A sad, proud smile. "Be careful with that machine. She kicks." "I know. I learned from the best." Silas looked out over the valley. The sun was setting, casting long shadows over the hills. "I'm going for my foreman papers next year," Silas said. Caleb looked at the boy. He saw the future. He saw the cycle continuing. The mines would keep running. The energy had to come from somewhere. The lights in the cities had to stay on. "Just remember," Caleb said, his voice raspy, "the coal ain't the valuable thing down there. The men are. You watch their backs. Always, I will." Silas drove off as the sun dipped below the ridge. Caleb sat alone on the porch. He took a sip of tea. He could feel the phantom weight of the helmet on his head, the ghost of the battery pack on his hip. He took a deep breath, listening to the wind in the trees. It didn't sound like the ventilation fans. It sounded like peace. He watched the first star appear in the twilight sky. It was bright and steady. A light in the darkness. Caleb closed his eyes and finally, truly, rested.